Don't try this at home. We're going to go into the comment section on YouTube and see a little bit about what Canadians are saying towards immigrants regarding immigration. Go home. We are full and we don't have jobs for our own kids in our own country. Go home. And 3 people liked that. Immigration in any country is to serve the needs of its own population, period. So much corruption, so much trash. Canadian people are fed up with the present situation and it has to change in number and quantity of candidates. PR is not a right, but a privilege. Great idea. Immigrate back home. Imagine how affordable Canada would be if 100% of them were deported. Now, this is not an activity that I suggest to anybody. Of course, as a YouTuber, I have the privilege of getting the positive and the negative reviews. And by the way, if you are a positive reviewer, I appreciate you and the time you take to leave a comment. It's far easier for people to leave negative trash than it is for positive. So drop some positivity and some love in the comment section. And if you're an immigrant hater, this is not the video for you. You can just go watch another video. Thank you. Bye. So, here's the thing. I've been on YouTube for the last 5 years and I talk about Canadian immigration and my experience as a Canadian immigrant. And over the last 5 years, I have seen a shift in Canada and I've also seen a shift in people's sentiment towards immigrants and immigration. Now, when I first started YouTube, the negative comments would be more about race and racism comments or racist comments. Now, the shift is a lot of immigrant hate and very little tolerance for immigrants and immigration. And here's the message. 1, it's not our fault. We don't just show up here on boats and saying, we're here, make some space. We're here to stay. Yeah. We don't get zapped down by spaceships. We're heavily vetted. We have to have a plan in terms of how we're going to get here. We have to leave our families behind, leave our homes behind. There's a lot of things that are at play when somebody chooses to immigrate. And understand that many countries, right, have immigration policies in place for the benefit of the country. And Canada is no exception. Immigration and immigration policies that exist in Canada is for Canada's benefit. Right? Now, whether it has been properly handled or mishandled, we're going to talk about that next. But I want to give people an opportunity to really think about, especially if you've never left your country before, to really think about what it is like when somebody chooses to go to another country and study for hopes of like better education or a better life for them and their families. For different reasons, people immigrate. Never mind the reasons that people immigrate. There's also people who come to our countries and try to recruit us to get us to come to their schools or whatever the case may be and prey on the Canadian dream that a lot of us have, because there is a sold better standard of living, better quality of life in North America or in the UK or in Australia, wherever the case may be, that affords us more opportunities than probably in our own country. And this is a collective. I'm speaking collectively. I'm not speaking about myself. I'm speaking about on behalf of all great immigrants, right? We're not here to try and take over your country. We're not here to try and take your jobs from your kids. We are here because we were allowed to come here because of a need that your country identified. Now, are your concerns valid? Are your concerns about the cost of living and about housing crisis and just the state of the standard of living in Canada valid? 100%. When I came to Canada 10 years ago, my rent was $600. I could find a place to rent for $600. And 4 years after, when I became a permanent resident and I decided to move up in life, rent was $1,800. Then fast forward to post-COVID and rent is $2,400. I see the change and I'm feeling the change, and so are everybody else that's coming. Just last week, I did a cost of living video to give you everybody an idea of what it costs to live in Canada in all of the major provinces, right? I didn't really talk about the Northwestern Territories or the Yukon. Yeah, sorry. But the major provinces that people usually go to, I spoke about that and I broke that down to give people a realistic expectation of what it's like to live in Canada. Because whether we like it or not, one, immigration is not stopping. It may slow down because they need to reassess it, but it's not going to stop. There is this thing called the population trap, where Canada can't afford to slow down immigration, nor can they afford to increase immigration. So it's this weird trap because one, there are industries that need people in those industries. And we're going to talk a little bit about the real labor shortage issue. There's that. You need more homes, so you need people to build those homes. Manufacturing, there's needs in manufacturing. And Canada's population about a year ago was estimated to be about 20 million people. And it's estimated that 1 in every 5 of those 20 million people is going to retire within the next 3 years. Which means that within the next 3 years, there's going to be about 1.4 million people leaving the labor force, which needs to be replenished. And are there enough people in the workforce that are filling those shortages as quickly as they are going out? No. And this is where the immigration targets come in. Have the immigration policies been mishandled and mismanaged? Potentially, right? But that is not the fault of somebody who has come here because they were allowed to come here. They were approved to come here. We were heavily scrutinized. We had to spend a lot of money to get here, to be here, to stay here. And what is happening is the effects of a system that needs to be more properly managed. So any hateful sentiment, any anger, anything that is directed at immigrants is misdirected because we didn't just show up here. The immigration industry also has the potential to be very predatory, where people will prey on people's dreams and hopes, recruit them to some false offer of the sort, and when they come here, they either don't have the job, they don't have the school, they don't have whatever the case may be because they were lied to. So there's also that to take into consideration. Now, there is a disconnect between the immigration policies and the labor shortages. The actual labor shortages. Because like a lot of people have expressed, that to get into their profession, to get into the field that they have education or training in, it's hard, right? Getting a job is difficult. And this is where the disconnect is because here are all these labor shortages and there's a lot of unemployed people, there's a lot of underemployed people in Canada, that these people need to give these people the opportunity. But there are employers that I was speaking to a person just last week or 2 weeks ago that said their company only looks at resumes with students who come from 3 universities in Canada. If on their resumes they don't have that they attended any of those 3 schools, they don't look at the resumes. And I don't doubt that that is an issue in many organizations. So there is a problem with hiring people. There is a problem with giving people a chance. There's a problem with receiving resumes and actually reviewing them. There's a problem with the gaps and where the shortages are, and connecting the people who have the skills to fill those shortages there. Were the immigration projections sustainable? For the need and the demand, yes. For the infrastructure, no. And because of that, there are obviously negative effects on what it looks like to bring out 1 million people in a year or 2 to Canada. So definitely something has to be done. Definitely this needed to have been planned out a lot more sustainably. But it's not the immigrants' fault for being here. It's not their fault for coming here. It's not their fault that all of this is happening, because we are not the problem. Here's one more comment. Like, I don't usually entertain the negative comments at all, because it comes from, for me, it comes from a lack of thought, or a lack of thought process before somebody spews out something negative that actually makes no sense. So here's one. Imagine being part of the reason natives are being priced out of their own country, then go on the internet to complain about how expensive it is to do so. And this is to my cost of living video, which is an information-based video to help people to understand the realities of the cost of living across Canada. Nobody's complaining. Everybody's complaining. Imagine being part of the problem. I don't feel like I'm part of the problem at all. And so I'm not taken aback by that comment at all, because obviously very little thought was put into that comment, because we did not create the immigration targets, nor did we approve any visas, any permanent resident, anything. We came into a system that allowed us to be here and allowed us to come here. So now the system is where we need to be putting our attention on. How do we fix this? I don't know if there's any fixing it, honestly, because the same problem that immigration is trying to solve, it is kind of creating. So if there's already a labor shortage in healthcare, for example, and you bring some doctors in, those doctors bring their families, but you also need other occupations. If you increase the population by 1 million, you're going to need to provide for that additional 1 million. Like, there was one comment that says immigration is to serve the population of the country, period. When immigrants come to your country, they become part of your population. Yeah. And they need healthcare, they need houses, they need cars, they need whatever the case may be. And so when you bring people to solve the shortage, those people also kind of contribute to the shortage, not because they came here, but because they were allowed to come here. And so the shortage is like this revolving door that may never ever end, really. If they shut off the taps, like realistically, if the taps are shut off, and a lot of companies, when I went to Nova Scotia, I interviewed some people who are in the hotel industry, and this was just a limited number of people. I'm sure there's other people who had the same kind of experiences, that when the immigration tap was shut off, they were struggling to find workers. They were struggling to find people to work. And this is this is not for lack of posting jobs. This is not for lack of showing that there are available jobs. This is not for lack of having job fairs. There were literally nobody's applying, or under people that are not qualified are applying, or people were applying to several different jobs, and once they got hired, that person is now employed and is no longer available to fill this position over here. So just shutting the tap off, we kind of saw the effects of that during COVID, and measurements were put into place to allow international students to work overtime. So they were allowed to work up to 40 hours, which is a full-time work week. Imagine working full-time and going to school full-time. So they put temporary policies in place to say, international students, you can work as long as you need to, because we need to fill the gap that is not being filled now that the immigration tap is shut off and the world is on lockdown. Now, COVID has had its hand to play in that. So there's that. So the average person who is kind of just sitting around just seeing the problem and not really understanding the behind the scenes of it, it's easy to complain that, oh, the immigrants, go home, immigrants, because we were allowed to come here, and we were allowed to come here out of a necessity that your country identified. That is continuously a necessity. Now, is there a true labor shortage? And this is kind of where the disconnect between employees and employers exist, because there are some employers that are picky in terms of which school people must go to. Some employers are picky about having Canadian experience. Some employers are picky about different things that cause there to be underemployment. They're causing people to be working in places that they don't need to be working. They don't need to be working in Tim Hortons. They don't need to be taxi drivers, because they can go and be a doctor or whatever the case may be. because of that disconnect, which is a problem that immigration needs to address, that the immigration minister and his cabinet need to address. Employers need to be educated or probably incentivized. Employers need to be educated. Employers need to be open. Employers need to understand that their people are here. There are people here, there are more than qualified people that are here to do the jobs that you need them to do. The gatekeepers of jobs and old-fashioned people who only review schools, only review resumes from certain schools in Canada, it needs to stop. It has to stop. There's enough space for all of us. And division, immigrants versus Canadians, is not going to make for a peaceful country at all. Because we're not here by accident. We didn't just show up, right? Even refugees, they didn't just show up. Some of them were brought here by the Canadian government. Now, finger pointing and blaming aside, because regardless of how we got here, here we are. How do we move forward given the current situation? Some people are leaving. Some people are choosing to leave. And the truth is that immigrants, it's easier for immigrants to leave because we can go back home, or we've done it before, so we're kind of savvy. But one is to give people a chance. Give people an honest chance in the labor market, in the labor force, when they submit a resume. Give people an honest chance and remove the biases that exist. I can understand in some occupations where having to be within the Canadian environment in medicine, probably, because in some countries organ donation is not a thing. In some countries, the kind of technology that's available here is not available there. And so they need some sort of touching up on their expertise or experience or education to get there. Give them the opportunity to get that education and experience to get there if you have a shortage, right? 2, immigration is a very stressful process. It's a very stressful endeavor. And it is enough that we have undertaken this journey we've decided to do it, but we were also given the runway to do it. But we come here, we are separated from our families. We have to adjust to a new culture. We have to adjust to whether people like us or not. We have to adjust to probably being a minority, coming from a country where we were the majority. We have to adjust to not having support systems. We have to adjust to getting into the job market. And no, I get it. You're going to say, yeah, we chose to do it. Yes, we chose to go and undertake this very stressful process, which sometimes you don't realize how stressful it is until you're in it. But throwing hate and shade at immigrants for a problem that we did not cause is not helpful towards a situation where we are just fellow humans existing on this planet that all of us literally just showed up on and we were just born on. And we are just trying to make a living for ourselves and for our families, just like you, just like everybody else. And wherever it is that takes us, that allows us to do it, then that's where it is. That's just where it is, right? I truly believe that somebody being born in Canada versus somebody moving to Canada and choosing to make Canada their home is no more Canadian than the other, or no less Canadian than the other, because we actually chose to come here versus somebody who was just born here and said, well, let me just stay. And I'm not going to dismiss that. I'm not dismissing that. I'm just saying we are all humans on this earth, just trying to live a good life, trying to provide for our kids, trying to provide for our family, and circumstances have brought many people here, different circumstances, whether it was economical, family-based, just success-based, whatever the case may be. Here we are. And throwing shade, hate, driving us home isn't the answer. It is not the answer. Because if we all leave, if we all shut off the taps, understand that when somebody applies for permanent residency, we have to pay $1,030 something for permanent residency. When we pay for a visa application, we're paying about $200-300 for that. When we're paying for citizenship, we're paying about $700. And there are millions of people going through this process. Millions. Where is that money going? Into your country. We also paid taxes in our own country and left our own country behind for other people to live off of our taxes. It's just it's a part of the circle of life. So if you're still watching this video right now, drop a positive comment. Show some love to a group of people who are under fire at no fault of their own. Show some love to a group of people who have had to dream, struggle, and maybe victory in a place that was new, right? Any immigrant anywhere in a place that was new. Show some love. If you are still watching and you are a negative Karen or Ninny, please don't comment. We've had enough. We've heard enough. We hear you. We feel you. We honestly do. But we are not at fault. So let us focus on how to solve a problem that is here. It exists by showing some love and also employing people. I just wanted to make this video, but I also don't want to make the video because I'm not trying to attract the negative people. It's not our fault.